session. Before I turn it over to my colleague, Peter McGovern, I would like to invite you all to check out NAFSA Region 11's website for all our other upcoming programs. The next one will be on September 30th for ISSS Advising in an Era of Uncertainty. And I also would like to recognize all our sponsors and thank them, and they're listed on our website, which we'll put in this chats section towards the end of the program, and welcome you all to check it out. And I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Peter McGovern, who's the president and global founder of EdOdyssey, and he's also the Eastern Massachusetts representative in Region 11, and he'll introduce the rest of our presenters. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Zainab. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Like Zainab said, my name is Peter McGovern, and we're going to get started in just a minute here. As you all know, this session is entitled Career Change Navigation Tips and Strategies for Education Industry Professionals. To give you a bit of an overview of the session, just so you know what's ahead of you for this hour, it's an hour long. We promise to be respectful of your time, so we've carefully planned every moment. We're going to start with some introductions and a little bit of administrative stuff about the session. We'll get to know each of the panelists. My name's Peter, I'll be moderating, but we have three incredible panelists here with tons of wisdom who will be sharing their experience. We have some questions set up, some common questions. We also have some time for Q&A. And at the end of the session, we'll do a very brief wrap up and also have a cool little tangible takeaway home for you all that I hope will be a tangible product and resource for you as you potentially consider a career change or are in the midst of one now, or maybe you're not, but you just want to help someone else who is. So that's what's ahead this hour. In a moment, each of the panelists will introduce themselves, but today we have some great people. All of you are lucky. My name's Peter McGovern. I'm the Eastern Mass State Rep, and I also run an organization called EdOdyssey. And our three talented panelists are Christy Fry, Rachael Lamson, and Ruby Maddox. And they'll be talking about themselves in just a moment. To remind you about this session, hopefully you all know what's happening today. That's why you signed up and you're all excited to be here. But these are kind of our outcomes. So during this hour, we hope you'll be learning and gaining the following knowledge: utilizing different strategies to navigate obstacles in the job search, tips on successfully navigating job changes between knowledge community. For example, maybe you're considering an education abroad, an EA role, and you're considering transitioning to ISSS or something. Understanding different approaches in navigating career changes, and then entrepreneurial approaches to managing your career change. So maybe some innovative ideas that are a bit different to help you stand out and market yourself. Now, the fun part, our three panelists are going to introduce themselves, but really quick, we have such a big group today. Unfortunately, we can't all chat, but so we can get to know you a little better. We had one quick poll question, and you can type your answer. You can just type A, B, C, D in the chat box. So our question is, which best describes your motivation for attending this session? So we have a better sense of who you all are. Are you A, exploring a career change within international education? So you're already in international education and considering going to another knowledge community. Exploring a career change into international education. Maybe you're currently in a totally different area. That's B. C, maybe you were recently laid off or furloughed. And D is just the alternative, other / just curious. Let's see what people are. Awesome. We got some double letters. Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing. Now that we have a little better sense of who's in the room with us, I'm going to turn it over to our three panelists to introduce themselves and talk a bit about their experience and history in international education and their trajectory in the field. And we'll start with Christy Fry.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Peter, for this introduction. Could I just get a show of thumbs or something that you can hear me okay? Does everyone hear me okay? Yeah, awesome, great, wonderful. So my career path that I'm going to share with you so you can frame when I respond to any questions or I share any of my insights so you understand my frame of reference and my lived experiences. My career path involves both inside and outside the higher education sector, having begun my career after my undergraduate studies in government, doing intercultural communication. Shout out to MJ Bennett and the DMIS, Developmental Model of Intercultural Sensitivity. Though at the time I didn't have those words nor the formal training about this. I spent 4 years doing this work, particularly cross-cultural communication, liaison work with multinational companies and militaries while serving active duty United States Navy at an overseas NATO installation. Doing this work, I discovered how ethnocentric the United States military was, and that really saddened me. And because I was proud of my service and the Navy, and I knew we could do so much better. That led me to graduate school to learn the tools to make a difference. And that particularly led me to SIT Graduate Institute, and where I obtained my international education degree. Incidentally, my first day or my initial session date, for those of us in the ISSS world, and going through those registrations right now, was September 11th, 2001. And because that session date was that particular day, it actually allowed me to remain whole in graduate school and not be reclaimed by the United States Navy due to the events of September 11th. It was also my first introduction to NAFSA. November 2001, Worcester, Mass, where we just were this past year. Honestly, kind of overwhelming and scary. And that was even before I knew what Big NAFSA was and the annual conference. So a lot that I learned just in the early stages. After SIT, I returned overseas and began my inside higher ed career at the University of Malta, in Malta. And that's where I discovered international admissions. It's where I found my place in this greater international ed field. It led to an 18-year career in IEM, International Enrollment Management, for those of you still learning the knowledge communities. That resonated for me because of my strengths and interests in research, connecting with people, travel, basically service, helping others. The last 4.5 years of my IEM career, I was in a one-person office role again. And I'd done this earlier in my career too, though I recommend it there's some tremendous learning and experience that you can gain from a one-person office. I will also share, it can also be a lot to manage. And that started to chip away at my passion and drive. Couple that with the current federal administration taking office about that time, and it was just becoming too heavy. Because of the current federal administration, I also realized just how necessary it was for those of us with immigration experience, regardless of how much or little, to step up and serve. I focused my job search on these types of positions, and I arrived at my current role in July 2019. Regardless of the pandemic, regardless of the current federal administration and climate, I have completely rediscovered my passion and drive. I'm part of an amazing team here at Middlebury, and I'm very, very grateful to be here with each of you. I acknowledge also just how important holding space for this conversation is for so many of us right now. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you so much, Christy. So Christy is our first panelist. Our second panelist, Rachael Lamson. Tell us about you.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see your faces. Peter told me I have to stick strictly to 2 to 3 minutes, so it's a good thing that I'm a really fast talker. My name is Rachael Lamson. Some of you may know me as Rachael Capuano. It's my maiden name. You can see from the screen I have had the fortune of working in 3 of the NAFSA knowledge communities in education abroad, international student and scholar services, and international enrollment management. I started my career pretty much right after college. So I've been in IE for about 7 years. So certainly not an extensive period of time, but I feel very fortunate to have had a lot of different experiences within my time within the field. So I started my career with CIS Abroad, an international education organization, and I primarily focused on managing university partnerships, recruiting domestic students to study abroad. After this role, I pretty much thought, you know, it's education only for me, or education abroad only. This is the only path within this field. I now need to look for jobs as a study abroad advisor, a study abroad coordinator. You know, this is it. I then moved to New York City, and during my job search, I had a former colleague say to me, you know, why don't you expand your search a little bit? Why don't you look at international student services? Why don't you look at this you know, giant organization within the field, the Institute of International Education? So I thought, okay, yeah, sure, I'll try it, I'll apply. And I was fortunate enough to then transition to working on the Fulbright program. I helped manage the Fulbright Foreign Language Teaching Assistant program. And I was really blown away. I was like, wow, there's so many similarities between EA and ISSS that I just didn't even know about. It's great because I'm still in touch with a lot of the people that I was before. So it really opened my eyes that there are a lot more opportunities than just the one knowledge community that I served in. Shortly after that, I relocated to Western Massachusetts, and I now work as Associate Director of International Admissions at Western New England University. And again, I'm blown away. There's so many similarities between EA, ISSS, and IEM. Every day I'm, you know, working with these overseas universities, and I have these like light bulb moments where I'm thinking, wow, you know, when I worked in study abroad and I was working with the overseas universities, now I'm the overseas university. You know, now the students that I'm working with are coming to study at my institution. So it's just been really interesting to see all the similarities. And like I said, I've been very fortunate to wear wear different hats. And I was joking with the other panelists that I have 3 of the 5 knowledge communities under my belt. So hopefully I can tick those other 2 off and get that experience further down the road. So I wanted to include just a few photos in some of the professional organizations that I've been a part of, because I credit a lot of my connections to the volunteer opportunities that I've had. And so these are just some of the ones that I've been involved with, and I'm happy to talk more about at the end with the panel questions. So thanks again. It's so nice to see so many of you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. And I think we're seeing already with Christy and Rachael, it's incredible like how much wisdom and different backgrounds we have here. And it's a great reminder that our skills are transferable. You don't have to stay education abroad, or international education is so much. It's not just education abroad. And finally, we have Ruby. Ruby, introduce yourself.
Hi, so my name is Ruby Maddox, and I am currently the Study Abroad Advisor and Internships Coordinator at Mount Holyoke College. And so my path into all of this was probably a little bit unconventional, but I mean, what is conventional? I started out in the nonprofit sector. My master's degree actually is in nonprofit management and philanthropy. And I did that because I had started an urban agriculture organization in my hometown called Gardening Community, and had done that for a number of years before going to work for Mount Holyoke. And so that was kind of my first foray. I'll start my little timer. My first foray into the higher ed sphere. And I didn't know a whole bunch about working in higher ed, and ended up spending about 10 years working for Mount Holyoke, and got exposed to just what it meant to work in kind of like a global environment, global community, because there were so many different students from so many places. And I was from, you know, Springfield, Massachusetts, and just hadn't had the opportunity to do that a lot, interact with folks from just everywhere. And it just made the idea of going abroad that much more tangible. And so I worked at Mount Holyoke while I completed my undergrad degree. I only had an associate's at the time. And part of doing that was me going to Ghana in 2010 to look at urban agriculture over there and do a kind of comparison research on that movement there and the urban ag movement, you know, where I was from. And obviously that whole thing that happens to people when they go abroad and they just see a whole new world got me really interested in international education, but I think a lot of it was from the perspective of, you know, the nonprofit sphere. So at the same time as working in higher ed, I started to sort of like have this idea of wanting to create more opportunities for students who look like me to be able to access those opportunities as well. And so that happened, and I'm working at Holyoke, and I'm thinking about that, and I'm also realizing like, okay, I've got a master's now, and this has been an amazing, you know, environment, amazing community, but after 10 years, it was just like, what's next, right? And so that started somewhere in there, was 2 years of job searching, which is very much relevant to like this stuff where I was searching for a job, not just a job. Like it's not like I was rushing to leave Mount Holyoke. My boss was actually pretty amazing. And so, you know, it was searching, it was sending out, you know, resumes, you know, doing all the research online, doing all this stuff. Because when you're in a particular position too, for like a number of years, it's like, okay, what's trending now? What are interviews like now? What are resumes supposed to be now? And after like 2 years of like searching and doing all this stuff, I ended up working at Clark University and meeting the awesome Alyssa Kramer. But it also gave me an insight into advising students around finding that first job and internships and all of that sort of stuff. And yeah, and it was there that I started Leaders of the Free World, which is it's an international experience program for young Black men. And that is my timer, sorry. I was really trying to be up on that time. Yes, ended up starting Leaders of the Free World. I still work in higher ed. I went back to Mount Holyoke and officially started working in international ed and study abroad, and still do Leaders of the Free World, still bring our students to Ghana. And that's my story.
Awesome. Thank you, Ruby. And we're right on schedule, so don't worry. So
awesome.
Now,
okay.
now you all know Christy, Ruby, and Rachel a bit. And honestly, since I'm the MC, I'll make some fun comments. I've had the privilege of working with them over the last few weeks developing this. And sincerely, if I was looking for a job or something happened, I would reach out to these three people. They have such cool backgrounds, and as you've heard, are rather distinct. I mean, we have three unique approaches and experiences here, so they don't all have the same trajectory. And so Zainab and I really hope that their wisdom, which comes from very different perspectives, you get some tidbits from everyone. With that in mind, we're going to transition now into some questions. So now we're actually going to have our panel discussion. We've put together a bunch of common questions that have been coming up a lot. So we'll go through these now. And then after this, we'll also have some time for Q&A. So if there's something you want one or all of the panelists to expand on, or if there's a question that you're looking to get answered that isn't here, write that down, keep it in mind, and there will be time at the end. So without further ado, our first question, I'm managing more screens here. Can you recommend your top 3 strategies for people considering a career change? And I don't know who wants to start. I think they're all gonna kind of share a tidbit on this question for you all.
Okay, should we go in the order that we introduced ourselves? Does that make sense?
Perfect.
And then we won't have this awkward pause. One thing we didn't choreograph, darn it. So for me, relationships are everything. And I think that goes back to why international enrollment management was really resonated for me. But when I was thinking about my transition out of IEM into International Student Scholar Services, my immediate thought was, who can I talk to? Who can I ask? And I've noticed some names in this that are in the participant list here that are some of those names I actually reached out to and said, this is what I've been doing for a long time. Can I do this? Can I make this transition? Tell me what your day-to-day is. So I would say inventory the colleagues you know or you can be introduced to in that new sector that you want to transition into. Conduct informal interviews to get a better sense of it if you're really not that sure. And then identify your priorities. Is it institution type, size, office, culture? And then also be willing to expand it a little bit larger than those priorities, because sometimes you got to take what you can take and then work your magic once you're there. And I'll pass it to Rachael.
Thanks, Christy. I think my main tip is pretty obvious in the context of NAFSA, but it has helped me so much in my career that I just want to remind folks of the opportunities that are out there. Volunteer with organizations who are looking for volunteers. So one of the best parts I think about volunteering is that there's no application. You don't need to have this really impressive background. You don't need to go through a formal interview process. So it's almost like an informal way of getting this, not a job, but an opportunity to network with other people and to learn different aspects of the field. And, you can join these committees, and then, as Christy mentioned, these relationships will inevitably blossom into long-term connections. So one of my personal experiences is that I have a colleague, I didn't see her on here, but a special shout out to Sarah Dart. She and I served on an LFA committee together. And at the time, we were both working for study abroad providers, 2 different companies. So we had never worked together in a professional capacity outside of LFA. And when I transitioned to my job at IIE, she served as one of my references, because we all know during job transitions, you can't always ask your boss for a recommendation. So I thought, who else do I know? Who else who can really speak to my professional ability, who can serve as a reference for me? And so Sarah, was amazing in helping me land that job. So all to say, if you're not already involved in some sort of volunteer role, there are a number of organizations out there, NAFSA, of course, LFA, AIRC within the ISSS world or IAM world. I'm forgetting so many forums, CIEE, there's just a number of them. So like I said, those relationships really can blossom into networking opportunities down the road.
Awesome. And I would say, I'm big on doing like the research. So it's just like, obviously can't do research alone. So love what my 2 co-panelists said, but I'm someone who will like, okay, the organization's hiring or whatever's out there, I'm going to that company's website. I'm looking at who's there, who they hired, what positions, what are their backgrounds, what do I bring to the table in that? How might I frame my proposal, my resume, and everything like that to them? Who could I reach out to? So it's just like, I'm like stalking this company or organization, making sure I can get as much information as possible, as well as connecting to other people and trying to figure out how I can get closer. If that company or organization is putting posts out there, if they're holding some type of workshop or something, I'm there, I'm making comments, I'm trying to be as visible and knowledgeable about that organization or industry as possible, to be able to figure out, okay, what's going to be my in.
Awesome. Thank you all. The next question, what has been the biggest barrier / challenge for you? And do you have any tips to deal with them? And I think Christy is going to help us with this question.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. This is the one that actually, it prevented me from considering this transition sooner. And when I really started to look at why I was hesitating so much, I realized what was at the core of it all actually was permeating across my entire life, not just my professional life. And it's about confidence. As a woman, I recognized that there was some systemic stuff that I was just not recognizing that was going on, and I wasn't allowing myself to truly see my transferable skills, my experience, and to allow that, all of that to resonate and to speak with that voice. I can think, like, as in this moment right now, I'm thinking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and what an example of how to rise above that, right? And so it's very fitting, actually. But for me, it was, how did I overcome that challenge. And for me, it's reach out to other strong people in your life that you maybe look up to, or that you see demonstrating and modeling those traits that you think you don't have, and then you'll likely discover you have them. You just need to almost give yourself permission to recognize them, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there and be vulnerable in a brilliant way, right? And so for me, that was the #1 challenge. And then I think the second one was learning how to frame my experiences so that you could demonstrate them in examples that you give, right? So, wow, I imagine international orientation, if you're an international student in scholar services, if you're trying to transition into that, I can imagine international orientation requires a great deal of timing and time and planning, right? And I said, well, actually, in my role while I was in the IEM sector, you know, I relied heavily on my time management skills and my organizational planning skills when creating an international travel schedule throughout multiple countries for multiple weeks on end. And so just finding ways to reframe your skills, I think those were the 2 biggest challenges, but I think it really boiled down to that first one, the confidence and allowing myself to recognize my strengths. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Christy. I think that's a huge tip. I was mentoring someone recently who was in education abroad and was thinking about her skills and was looking to make a transition to a totally different market. And it's right, like organizing travel, if you say organizing travel, it's one thing, but those skills apply to so many more. And so it's just a matter of articulating that in a different way. Our next question that's come up, and all the panelists had a thought to share on this, a resource or a website or a book that you would recommend to the people in the session that are looking for tips and strategies. And if we can go reverse order on this one, start with Ruby.
Sure, I had to unmute myself. Honestly, a book I would recommend is You Are a Badass. I think that's the right name, by Jen Sincero, just because it's just good for so many things. And I think to Christy's point, when you're going through something like this, you know, it can chip away at your confidence and what you feel like you're capable of doing. And so, yeah, it's a good book for that and just kind of reinvigorating that. And also, I know YouTube, social media is there, but I would also say YouTube videos, which sounds kind of weird, but when I was looking up things like, you know, what's the best way to do a video interview, even before COVID, you know, what are some tips you want to remember, things like that. I was finding all that information of people doing mock interviews and things like that on YouTube, which was better, modeling it in that way better than reading about it.
Rachael?
Yeah, the resource that I use probably a little too much is LinkedIn. I'm a huge fan. I was joking with the panelists in one of our first calls that I said, okay, we're ending this call. I'm gonna go add you all on LinkedIn right away. So don't be surprised when you see my invitation. But I really do believe that it's a great way to network. It's a great way to see what other people in the field are up to. They may share free events. They may share resources. They may share job opportunities. So it's, I really do, after every professional meeting, every interaction I have, I go right on LinkedIn and I add the people and I make a little note. I say, it was so great meeting you. I really hope we can stay connected. And then who knows? I mean, if you're like me, maybe you'll do a full circle and you'll meet back up with them at a conference like 7 years later. So LinkedIn is my resource to share.
Great, I totally agree. I've especially fallen in love with LinkedIn since now I'm on my laptop for 15 hours a day, not leaving my house. And finally, Christy, any resources or websites or books?
Yeah, I think my theme here is collegiality. So I'm saying my resources, all of you. You cannot replace lived experience, and you know, it's all about storytelling. You make space and listen, active listening, and it really does help. And just FYI, the LinkedIn thing, Rachael really did. The first time we met, she really did do that. And and I'm like, this is so simple, but it's so powerful. So just to let you know, we're walking the walk here. We're doing it as a team on this panel. So Thank you.
Thank you. Moving along, the next question that was coming up a lot and that we wanted the panelists to speak to is, what is one thing everyone in this room can do this week, so right now, to help others and or themselves with a career search? And again, this is for everyone. Maybe we can go back to Christy and we'll go up the line again.
So my pledge is I'm committing to responding to anyone who reaches out to me this week or requests a connection through LinkedIn. My pledge is that I'm going to respond to those this week and be meaningfully engaged with you. So that is one thing that I'm pledging to do.
Thank you. Rachael?
Yeah, I agree with Christy. I think along those same lines, I think, you know, we're all busy. Things are complete chaos at the moment, but we know this is a really difficult time for a lot of people transitioning and especially with a lot of layoffs and furloughs. So I'm especially committing to, you know, responding to the requests of, can you serve as a reference? Can you write a LinkedIn recommendation for me? You know, can you let me know if there are any job opportunities? Like really taking that and saying like, yeah, I absolutely can. Like, you know what, I have a minute after dinner. Let me just look on Indeed or NASA and let me see if there's anything that might be worthwhile to send to you. Because I think like Christy said, we really need to rely on each other during this time.
Thank you. And Ruby?
Yeah, I'm committed to, yes, doing the LinkedIn recommendations, but also just having chats with people. I think one of the things that I offer and that I'm really good at is just kind of like, just sitting in it with people and like, you know, where's the way forward look like for you, and having, committing to having at least, you know, 2 or 3 of those conversations over the next week of just giving some insight and directions on what's the next move and what possibilities could be there.
Fantastic. And this is where I see everyone in the room smiling, because we're realizing not only are the panelists friendly, knowledgeable, but they're also friendly and giving. So they've all committed to answering your emails and LinkedIn requests this week. And I will too.
I've got a Calendly.
Calendly is a great resource too to connect. Our next question is, how are you innovating in your career, in your current job, to stay / be valuable? And I think Rachael is going to take this one for us.
Thanks, Peter. I mean, I think that this goes for both your professional capacity and your volunteer capacity. The more that you can showcase your adaptability skills and your willingness to help with projects or with tasks that are outside of your traditional scope, I think the more that people want to work with you. So anything that you can do to say, you know, of course I'm busy right now, but yeah, let me serve on that committee, or let me help with this project, or let me just, you know, I really value your opinion. Why don't you tell me what you think about this thing that I'm working on? So just making sure that you know you're really showcasing, I want to be here. I'm very flexible. I'm committed to helping with the bigger picture. I think that will help keep you valuable. The other thing too, as I was thinking about this question, I'm working on sort of framing this like strategic plan, you know, internationalization at Western New England University. Like, what is that going to look like in 5-10 years from now? What do we need to do as an institution to really achieve some of these milestones? And as I was thinking about this strategic plan, I thought, you know, I should have a personal strategic plan. Like I should sit down and come up with the things that you know, I want to achieve in the next 5 years, and where I want my career to go, and some of the milestones that I want to hit professionally. And so I think it you know, goes hand in hand. It helps the organization that you're currently working at, but it also helps you, because if you have a really clear outline of where you see yourself and some of the skills you want to gain and some of the professional connections you want to gain, you know, it's a win-win. So I think coming up with a strategic plan for yourself could be really valuable. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachael. I love this question, and I really loved Rachel's answer, because I'm an entrepreneur. I've started several organizations, and yeah, I mean, putting your entrepreneurial spirit hat on and thinking about how to innovate, not only in your role and current position, but for yourself, because you're important too. I think is key. I know in every job description I've ever published in my life when I'm hiring someone is an entrepreneurial spirit. So I love that, Rachel. That wasn't like a soft job offer, but let me know, Rachel. And then finally, our last question, all of our panelists have something to contribute here. And I think this is a great question because it probably, judging by the chat, it does apply to a handful of you. And I know it's a fragile world, things are happening. And so all of us, even if we're gainfully employed today, the hard truth is, nothing's ever certain. And so I'm sure this is a big, scary question, hopefully with less scary answers. And so panelists, if you were to lose your job tomorrow, what would you do? Where would you start? What would you say? And maybe we can start with Rachel. She's been in the middle of the line the whole time.
Thanks, Peter. Gosh, I'm nervous just thinking, thinking about the times that I have, been in this job search, and to go along the lines of what we're kind of preaching and to be vulnerable myself. When I first left my job at the Institute of International Education, I moved to a new town and I needed a job. So I took a job at a publishing company, and I knew the very first day that I walked in, this isn't the right fit. This is not within international education. I knew it in my gut. This isn't me. And so I took a really big risk, and I left that job after a couple of weeks, and I allowed myself some time to process that experience, and I allowed myself some time to accept the fact that it wasn't what I was looking for. And then I took that same energy and I really honed in on what are the skills that I'm bringing to the table? What is it that I'm looking for in a job? I looked at hundreds of job descriptions, and I said, what is it in that job description that I like? And what is it in that job description that I liked? So I allowed myself to take some time to really think through what it was that I was looking for. And I accepted the fact that I tried something and it didn't work. And my heart was really in international education. And so I focused all of my energy on just finding a role that fit what I was looking for and within the field that I was looking to be in.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't answer the question. My answer is that if it were to happen again, that's exactly what I would do.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I've done everything in terms of just like jobs and roles and things like that alongside, the main job. And so I think it was always helpful to figure out if I lost my job tomorrow, it's just like, okay, what are the side hustles I could probably rely on just to sort of keep the money coming in, but also thinking about what are some of the things positions that I may not have looked at originally, being open and like, okay, well, this might, this maybe doesn't have everything that I need or want, but it has something. Maybe it's part-time, and I have done that. When I came back to Mount Holyoke, it was a part-time job, but it was in international education where I knew I wanted to be. And I was just like, okay, I'm gonna have to maybe beef up the side hustles to make this work. And eventually that went full-time. So I think what I started as being open to possibilities I hadn't considered. It would be thinking about what side hustles can I do. I was an Uber driver for a while. Could I do to sort of like help in that? And then also, even though it's like it's pretty vulnerable, it's letting everybody I know in my network know that I'm searching. People get stuff across their tables all the time. And sometimes they literally don't even know what to do with it other than to like, delete it in their inbox because they don't need a job. So give them a place to send that when that stuff is coming through the people in your networks, that they know that you're a repository for those opportunities. And that's, beyond sort of like maybe the LinkedIn stuff, but you're putting yourself in a position to accept those things. That's where I would start.
I have done a couple different things, but I think if I were to just place myself in this moment, in the circumstances that we're in right now, what would I do? I think the first thing I do is, honestly, I would exhale. Because I feel like we're all operating at such a high tempo with such unprecedented everything. The variables are swirling around. I think I would really try hard to exhale first, because it's so hard to make clear decisions when you're not breathing properly, when you don't have a clear vision. And I know sometimes we don't feel like we have the ability to do that. And so I would try and do at least a quick breath, and then I would begin. And I think what Ruby said is really, it really resonates for me, is like, allow people to know where you're at and what's going on. Because if you don't do that, then you've really limited the opportunities that, and all of the things we're trying to share here today, they're just minimized in a lot of different ways. So just being open about where you are, and being willing to adapt. My very first higher ed job in the United States actually was doing US-based admissions. It wasn't international admissions. But I needed a job. I had to pay the bills. You know, that SIT grad school was a little pricey, and that, you know, my grace period was gone. So, you know, I had to find a way to start being employed. And so I took that job knowing it wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I was aware and mindful of the institution, and I paid attention around me, and I found ways to pick my spots, and I ended up becoming a DSO. And I started doing international recruiting with the help of the athletic director, doing international student athlete recruitment. And so, you know, creating those spaces when maybe your hand is a little bit more forced, right? And I could feel like this is one of those moments where we could feel pretty forced with what our options are. So that would be where I would begin.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. So I took a lot from that discussion, and I hope all of you did as well. Moving forward, we're right around 12:44. So we have about 15 minutes left. Right now, before we wrap up and conclude and get to kind of our special, we have a brief kind of tangible take home for you that we want to share. So please stick around. Before that, are there any questions? This is a big and heavy topic. Job loss, job applications is scary, it's confusing, and that's only exacerbated by where we find ourselves in the world in 2020. So I'm sure there's a lot of questions. If you have one, obviously you can always follow up outside, but questions right now for the group, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you and you can unmute yourself. Or if you prefer to write, you can put it right in the chat box and be watching that. And we will do our best to get to as many questions as possible right now. Cindy, sorry.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess Christy went to SIT. I also went to SIT. And I remember one of my professors used to compare the practicum search or the job search to dating. And so I found a new job. I got laid off in April, and I got a new job just started this month. And I can already tell, if we have to make a comparison to relationships, that this is like the good boy who's going to treat me right and never do me wrong. And like, it's a really good, it's a good boss, a good environment, good coworkers. But my heart's just not in it fully, right? Because my heart isn't IE. So I'm wondering, how do you get over the fear of leaving the good boy for like following your heart for the other kind of job?
I mean, the advice that I was given when I was in your situation, Cindy, where I was like, I just know this isn't for me, is that it's a risk. That's the reality, is that it's a potential risk. You know, you're leaving the good boy. He's nice enough. He's, you know, treating you fine, but you want something better for yourself. So you could leave, and it could, you know, maybe you find out that, man, I had it really good. So maybe I keep in touch, or I follow up, and I see if there's any other, you know, opportunities at this organization. But on the other hand, you could find someone even more amazing. You know, you could find your dream job. And so just my personal opinion, I think that it's worth the risk, especially it sounds like you have an extensive background, you know, you have that graduate degree. So if you take that leap of faith, you know, don't wish over, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? you know, just you know, realize there's risks associated with it. It's not, it might not always be perfect, but I think that it is worth it if in your heart you know it's just not right. So at the end of the day, you can always get another job. That's what I was told. You know, it's you're valuable. You have the education, you have the experience. So I say do it. I say take the risk.
Thanks, Rachel. Love that analogy. I guess jobs and career search is kind of our like dating and relationships. I saw that Juliana had a question.
Yes, hello everybody. This was a really great session and I learned a lot. I've been taking a lot of notes, so thank you so much. I also recently was laid off. I've been working in ISSS for the past 6 years. So I'm definitely looking to get a new job in general, but also change into education abroad. So thank you for all the great tips. One of my questions was a follow-up to something Rachael said about volunteering. I have been looking for volunteer opportunities, but a lot of them, especially during COVID, are difficult to find because usually they're in person in normal times. So do you have any suggestions about specifically this time COVID related opportunities? I have volunteered for LFA, but obviously that's an in-person type of thing. And I'm not sure if they're doing it in my location this year.
I have some recommendations, but I'm wondering if we might be able to open this up to the entire audience. We have over 50 people here and everyone's a resource. So if that's okay with you, panelists.
Yeah, that makes sense. People might need volunteers like right now. Gilman needs readers.
I am on the NAPSA leadership team and am embarrassed I don't have an exact answer for you. Zainab or Alyssa or Amanda, are we still taking applications for a couple of the spots that are open?
We're not taking any for this for 2021. In terms of the regional leadership positions, those regional leadership positions always open up. We start publishing them towards early midsummer, and we always have a deadline around late August, early September for the people rolling on the next year. Typically in the NAPSA Region 11, this year we had, I think, 7 positions that turned over. Usually it's somewhere between 7 and 10 positions that turn over each year. It's a fantastic opportunity to get involved. There are currently some NAPSA national leadership positions that are open. Some of those require that you have, I think it's things like the chair cohort coach. And I believe for that position, they want you to have been a regional chair before. So some of them will have some sort of prerequisite, but there are NAPSA national leadership positions that don't have that prerequisite. So you just have to see what they are and what might be required. In general, for the region, there are no prerequisites. The only prerequisite position is that to run for chair-elect, you have to have served on the team previously. That's the only requirement. But if you have questions, you're welcome to reach out to Alyssa Kramer is currently our conference chair designate. Peter's our Eastern Mass rep. I am your Region 11 chair, yay. Zainab is our main rep. So if you have questions about what it's like to serve on the regional team and what that volunteer experience is like, we would be happy to answer questions that you guys have about that. It's a great opportunity.
Now, Amanda, if I could also put a plug in, even though the official positions have, the deadline to apply has passed, if and when the next conference is in person, or even if it's not, we will have a few further openings on like the local arrangements committee, which is how I got involved when the conference was in Worcester. I was asked to be, or I voluntold, I don't remember, to be the chair of the local arrangements committee. And from there, I then became more involved and became the conference chair designate. So that sort of fell into my lap. I didn't really know about local arrangements committee before. but again, there's other things that will come up, or even like the nominations committee. I think Steve sent out a call for people who wanted to read the applications if you were interested in being on the committee. So definitely sign up for the NAFSA listserv if you aren't on it. It is a lot of stuff that's not about jobs, but there definitely will be more volunteer opportunities that will be virtual coming through there.
I would, if you're not already on the Region 11 Facebook page, Sarah Dart is our communications rep and does, outside of our conference time, does a lot of the posting. So she tries really hard to post job openings, any positions within the region on that Region 11 Facebook page as well. We're working on making that page more active. So please like us. You'll see stuff there as well.
And I just posted them in the chat, both the Region 11 website and Facebook site. So please save and join and connect. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you all. I want to be respectful of our times. I know it's 12:53 already, which is perfect. We planned for 12:53. So I'm going to cut off the Q&As there. If you have any other questions, I know the panel and myself are all very eager and happy to connect or help with that. And actually leading into our next slide, I think everyone else in the room will be as well. So right now, one of my co-panelists is going to drop this link in. We have an interactive 2-minute activity. If you don't do it now, you can do it right after the session. But if you have 60 seconds right now, we'll wait for you. If you click on this link, we made a super short form. And so if you'd like to opt in to be part of this, we have 51 plus people on this call today. And what this form collects is your name, your email, your LinkedIn profile if you have one, and then also your need and or your give. Everyone has actively chosen to be here today. And so if you have a need, a job, networking, a LinkedIn recommendation, let the community know. And likewise, whether or not you're looking for a job or you're just here to curiosity, if you have a give, can you do something for someone in this room? We're all in this together, cliche, I know, but it's true. And the 51 of us, 50 of us have found ourselves here together at this time. And so if you take a moment just to fill out this form, anyone that chooses to fill out this form will take all the information and send this out to the entire group, the registration list. So you'll be able to look through everyone's name, and as you browse the needs and gives, if someone is offering to give something that works well for you, awesome, hit them up. And likewise, as you review the list, if you have something to give and you identify a need on the list that you could help, it'd be very sweet of you to reach out to that person. So the link is right there on the side. And we have a couple, we have a minute or two here. So you're welcome to do that right now while we speak. Hopefully you'll keep Zoom open and stay with us. And so I'll give you 30, 60 seconds of silence to fill out this form. If you don't get it done right now, that's okay. You can just leave the window open in your internet browser.
Sorry about that. For some reason, the bit.ly link wasn't automatically converted.
Oh, that's fine.
That's what. Got it.
I made the bit.ly only so visually it might be easier to type, but that works perfect too. Do we only want Region 11 people? I think in a remote world, I think with Zoom, we can all help each other. So I would say anyone that's here today is very welcome to fill it out if that's okay with the panel.
We're so excited that our non-Region 11 friends came to join us. I know everybody is doing such different and diverse things for their virtual regional conferences this year, and we're doing something that's a little bit different from everyone else in the country. So we are thrilled to have our non-New England friends. Welcome.
Yeah, everyone's welcome. The Canadians are welcome too. We were actually going to be in Canada this fall. My last trip before COVID was to hang out with the great NAFSA leadership team in Canada.
We
Awesome.
did have a really nice time in Montreal the week the world exploded.
Not that it matters, but if the conference was in person, it would have been rather beautiful. It's a fantastic location and there was a lot planned. So awesome. So it's 12:57. I'm going to keep talking. If you haven't filled out the form, please just make sure you have the link or open another window. You can do it now. My only ask is if you could get that done soon, like let's say like an hour to create some urgency here. That way we have the answers today and we'll be able to share those with you tomorrow. So finally, to conclude, thank you so much. All of our contact information is on the screen. You can take a screenshot, but again, don't worry. We'll be following up with an email, and so we'll include our contact information again, but it's right there if you want it. And a few final reminders or notes. Again, there's going to be an email going out to thank all of you. It will go out to everyone that registered today, and that will include the contact information here, and it will also include the information for any and all of you that have chosen to complete that form that we just shared. And then a couple other general reminders that we have covered today, but just another one. Visit the Region 11 conference webpage. It's amazing. And it's also where you can find all the other virtual programmings. There's a business meeting coming up. There's bingo, there's prizes, there's really cool sessions across all knowledge communities. There's something for everyone. And then finally, Alyssa and my other colleagues are running an incredible Facebook page. I don't use Facebook a lot, but it is getting me. There's a lot of cool stuff happening on Facebook. So now I log in every day just because I'm so excited about the Region 11 Facebook page. There's dogs, there's coffee mugs. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you have to go in to know what I'm talking about. There's prizes, there's conversation, there's colleagues. You can add some new Facebook friends. It's like a more casual LinkedIn. So Rachael will like it too. There really is something for everyone there as well. So those are some reminders and notes. Thank you all for attending. And again, an email will go out with our contact information, add us on LinkedIn, and the Google form responses will be shared as well. And hopefully I didn't miss anything. The panel can just wave if I'm good. Thank you all so much. This was a blast. Thanks for spending your afternoon with us. Have a delicious lunch. And I'm sure we'll see you at another NAFSA session soon, which are all listed on the regional website. Bye everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.